Good afternoon, friends. A very warm welcome to each one of you today. I have a very special person who is my inspiration and who has played a huge role in my transformation. And here we have Dola Das Gupta. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing her because we are here to listen to her. There is so much that I can share. There's so much. In fact, an entire session could go with me talking about what all I've learned from her. However, I don't want to get into that right now. Maybe, in between our questions, I'll also share what I've learned from her. And over to you, Dola. We would like you to start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little about you and your family and your children, especially, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Sharmila, and so many praises you have put on me. But I just want to say that I feel always happy to talk about unschooling and deschooling and about this whole topic of parenting and children. And it's always nice to be doing it with someone like you who's a friend also, like
Yeah.
so yeah, so thanks a lot for inviting me today. And so my name is Dola, and I have two children. My older one is older one is a daughter. She's 19, and younger one is a son. He's 15, and my mother lives with us. We have a dog, and yeah, we are pretty much. I was thinking, what should I say about my family, because I knew this question always comes up. And
Yeah.
over the years, my responses have changed. There was a
Hmm.
time when I was very excited and very, like, rebellious about it, and I would go on and on and on. But now, today especially, the response that is coming to me is that uh, what's when we started unschooling, it was all about a new path, a new adventure, seemed like a very difficult one with a lot of struggles and fears and obstacles. But and now when my children are older, like my daughter's, like I said, 19, my son is 15, I just feel that it's nothing great. It's just that it gives us a lot of peace and joy, and it doesn't feel like we are doing something very different. It doesn't feel like we are different from the rest of the world or from the rest of the people. It just feels like we lead a life that suits us, and that's about it. Uh, that's how I feel now. Of course, I mean, I
Wow.
didn't feel this way before.
Right,
Didn't
right.
feel this
Yeah.
way.
In fact, I have also been going through these curves, where
Yeah,
initial excitement and then a feeling that, you need to settle down and you need to really understand what's happening. There are so many changes that are happening within yourself, as well as you can see changes happening around in your family, your children, your spouse. And then once again there is a big curve where you are again excited and you want to share a lot about
yeah,
your unschooling journey, and then you come down again.
yeah,
Now I have kind of reached a phase where I have become more accepting of different ways in which people adopt homeschooling. So the spectrum is large, from homeschooling to unschooling, and everybody falls somewhere in between. And like I said, I was sharing with you earlier, the essence is the same. There's something that is there as a common thread among all of us, and that is what keeps us going,
yeah,
every homeschooler,
yeah,
unschooler.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, so Dola, keeping today's topic in mind, and we want you to talk more about deschooling as a process while you're sharing your journey. So I would like to know that did your children ever go to school? Because I'm asking this question because this question comes to me very often. Oh, the question of deschooling comes only when you have sent your child to school and then you are taking them off. Otherwise, we though are starting right from the beginning. So could you throw some light on this,
yeah,
keeping your story in mind?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so my daughter did go to school, but that was more like a play group, a play school actually. She
Mhm.
didn't really go to a big school. I think 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, we pulled her out from even a big school. Uh, so therefore, I can say that my son has never been to any kind of school. So, so when people ask this question about deschooling, or if your children have gone to school, then you have to do deschooling. Otherwise, why? But it's the question is not of deschooling the children. It is the deschooling of the parent actually,
Right.
because as a parent, most of us have been to school. We have been to school, we have been to university, we have gone to professional institutes, we have grown up in a culture of school. And school doesn't mean, by school, I don't mean a building where you go to, but
Mm.
the culture of school. School is a culture, schooling is a culture. And
True.
so the parents have actually been brought up in that culture of school. And it really doesn't matter if your child has been to school or not, but if as a parent you are planning to homeschool and you're still following the culture of school, then you might as well send your children to school. So,
Mm.
what is the real difference between homeschooling? And I'm going to use the word homeschooling without
True.
specifying, what is different kinds or whatever. Or maybe
True.
we can just say out of school learning.
Yeah.
Not going
Yeah.
to. So
Not.
if yeah, so if you're planning to give your children the experience of learning and educating without school, then what you do at home with your children, there has to be a difference between what happens in school and what you're going. If you're going to be doing exactly what schools are doing, then what is the difference? Then you're not really homeschooling, then you're just doing schooling. So it's the stepping out of the school culture, the schooling culture, that is the
Mhm.
real deschooling process. And
Wow.
we can imagine, if you have spent like around 15, 16, 17 years in a schooling culture, and before that your parents, your grandparents, your whole
Mm.
family, your friends, your peers, your whole community is part of a schooling culture, how deep rooted is that culture inside your psyche, in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your intelligence, in your thought process, that
Mm.
stepping out of that is actually for me the real process of homeschooling. Everything else is really secondary, it falls in
Mm.
place. But if we are not doing this, then we are still in schooling culture. And for me, I would say that is what I feel deschooling is really about. And then, of
Yeah.
course, we take each
Yes.
and every situation and each and every day and every moment when we are consciously stepping out of the school culture.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's how I think of
Wow.
deschooling.
So, could you elaborate a little more by giving an example of how, the school culture impacts or has an affects our homeschooling journey? So maybe it could be from your own journey or from all the different parents you interact
Yeah,
with and support. It
yeah.
could be anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I will point out a few things, like for example, one of the things that comes to mind is I always ask parents, and I've asked this to myself also, is that why do I want to homeschool? What is the reason? Now everybody will have a different reason for it. Like I have come across reasons such as, um, uh, schooling is expensive, so
Yes.
it's as simple as that. Uh, then there are other reasons. There's the school culture is competitive, where every child is pitted against the other to excel, to do well, to do
Mm.
better. Then, then some say we want our child to have more free time, more empty spaces, empty time, where the child is not controlled by homeworks and curriculum and tests and things like that.
Mm.
uh, then there's the question of which is a very pertinent question, I'm sure you get asked that too a lot of time, is the whole thing of routine and schedule and discipline. So
Mm.
so the struggle with it, because I remember I was when my first one came into my life, I was working in a company, in a corporate house, and I used to leave my child with a nanny at home.
Mm.
And I did that just for 3 4 months. I i went I used to go every day to work, and my whole mind was on my baby at home. I used to think, if I really wanted to do this, then why did I have the child, uh,
Mm.
so for me the need was that uh, if I've chosen to be a mother, it's not like I went with the flow of okay, now it's time to have a baby, so I should have. I had my first child much later, uh, after my marriage, and it was a real big conscious choice, because I remember even when I was a child myself, I really wanted to be a mother. So,
Mm.
and I realized that uh, I would like to be with my children. I don't want my child to be with somebody else for most of the time in the day.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
I want the child to be with me. I want to be with her. So for me, that was one reason as well. And then the other things that I remember my child my daughter, when she used to go to the play schools and all. I noticed that the play schools were a lot of fun, but that fun too was structured, and
Mm.
the fun was oriented and uh, towards uh, entry into the big school.
Mm.
So
Right.
what you call the playway method is actually a method, because it's in a way an indoctrination about shapes and sizes and colors and
Yes.
things like that, so that you are prepared for the big school. And I used to look at my daughter, that she really didn't need all those things, because she would just figure things out even otherwise. So
True.
this whole need to force children into a certain goal oriented path. So that's
Mm.
another thing that comes to my mind. So I think for me, so this whole structure to the day, which should be same for everybody, the question of discipline, which is externally imposed. uh, then the third is outsourcing, almost outsourcing the bringing up of your children to others, you know outsourcing the bringing of your children to others. These
Mm.
are some of the things that come to my mind, and I think these are the places where we need to step out of the schooling culture and look
Right.
at ourselves. closely.
Yeah, yeah.
So
This is so true, because even when I had my children, my initial thought was, I can't leave them with a nanny. I cannot leave them with a caretaker. I have to be around with them. And so slowly from a full-time job, I made it into a part-time and then into freelance. And then finally, I started teaching. First, I tried volunteering at a school, and then I started teaching just to be around my children. And yes, the first thing that came across to me was how we adults planned everything for the child to do,
yeah,
whether the child learns colors or alphabets or shapes or plants or whatever, everything was according to the world that an adult saw. And
hmm,
that somewhere, along my teaching journey used to bother me. And I used to say, why can't the child be involved? So my
yeah,
initial efforts were also, in my work as a teacher, was to plan along with my children. But
hmm,
even then, somewhere I wasn't catering to the needs of every child, because every child had a different way of doing things, different way of wanting things. So I so resonate with what you say when you say that, it's all adults who are deciding, and once
yeah,
that comes across to us, you start thinking about, yes,
yeah,
oh, what is happening? And that
yeah,
is one important element of the schooling, that,
yeah,
how do we become more and more aware of how we are
yeah,
influencing a
yeah,
child, and how is
yeah,
it impacting the child? What are the
yeah,
messages that a child is getting
yeah,
from these things? That's so
yeah.
crucial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I want to add to that because
Yes. Yes.
when I ask parents that okay, you want to homeschool, so what are your goals for your children? You know,
Mm.
uh, what are your goals for your children? So uh, so the goal, so a lot of them are honest, and that's fine. I want my child to excel in this, I want my child to excel in that, I want my child to be polite, to learn to speak well. School is a bad influence. They mix with other children, they learn bad words, all kinds of things uh,
Mm.
are there. Some say I want my child to not focus so much on academics but learn something else better, like sports or
Mm.
arts or music or something.
Mm. Mm.
uh, Very very few parents come up with the response which says, uh, my goal for my child is that my child is joyful in doing whatever he or she chooses to do. That
Mm.
is so rare. I mean, I think, and I'm not blaming parents, it's not their fault. Uh, it is the way even I was. So our goals are our goals. So, like how you said, that is my goal for my child, but what is my child's goal? uh,
Yes.
and to be honest, a 4-year-old's goal might be that day to just, finish a little drawing or something,
Yeah.
or it could be just, oh, I'm going to play with my friend for 2 hours, or
Mm.
oh, dad and mom are taking me for a trip to the park, or so the goal is so short term. And on a 4-year-old, we are imposing or
Mm.
extrapolating goals which are like, how many years ahead. And so I think that is also the biggest process of deschooling, is that keeping on asking yourself, what are the goals? What goals do I have for my children? What goals do I have for myself also, as a
Right.
person, as a human being? What goals do I have for my family as a unit? And to constantly see how often those goals are still competitive in nature with other
Mm.
families, with your neighbor or the community at large, or how those goals are still trying to fall in line with the set pattern of this. And I think if we are not stepping out of that, or at least questioning those, then there is no difference between a school culture and a no school culture.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, yeah. And I think to a great extent, this whole goal setting is is also a process, even it's a process of reflection for a parent. Because many a times when I started my unschooling journey, I on the outward I was saying that I was all for freedom of my children, freedom to make their choices. And then I used to come from the background, saying, but I would like you to do this.
yeah,
Or,
yeah, yeah,
if you do this, it is better. And okay, let's do it this way. So there was somewhere that I was also putting pressure on my children to follow what I wanted to do. And I've
yeah,
also seen that children, they have this very strong need to please their parents, to make their parents happy. So
hmm.
even if they don't want to do something, they will do it because
Yeah,
they want to make their parent happy without asking themselves whether they want to do it. And I think that that reflection for a parent is also part
yeah,
of
yeah,
deschooling. There is
yeah,
so much.
yeah.
Like just yesterday, I put a comment to somebody's query. I said, pa- homeschooling, deschooling is so much of inner work for a parent. It is tough, but it's not impossible. And for that,
Yeah,
a parent needs to put in a
yeah,
lot of efforts. So,
yeah,
there's also another question that comes across to me many a times, that how does this deschooling happen? Like,
hmm.
how does it happen? And how do we know that we have finished, completed deschooling and now we are on the journey? So, could you share from your experiences? How was it for you? How did you ever feel that your deschooling has ended, or throw a little
Hmm.
light on that?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I'll explain that with something that you mentioned, Sharvina, just now. You said that children want to please their parents, right? You said. So I think that's very true, and I think it's a biological thing or a natural thing. I don't know really what it is, but it's true that children want to please their parents. So so I think it the whole deschooling process should start, according to me, with with knowledge of this very important thing, that as a parent I am exerting some kind of power and authority over my children, that they can please me. So I am in a very powerful position as a parent, and therefore my children can do a lot of things to just please me. And I think to be aware of this dynamics is very important, because uh, do I really want my children to do things to please anybody, for that matter, if they don't want to, you know? So I think sometimes it's like, when uh, you start taking care of your health when you become aware of the sickness you have.
Mm.
So for me, deschooling is like that. When I become aware of the power I have, that's when I become more reflective and more conscious and more responsible in how I use that power over my children. So to know that I'm powerful, first of all, is very important. Most parents and most human beings don't know that. They don't really reflect on the fact that I didn't
Mm.
realize that oh my God, I have so much power over my children, actually, because they are dependent on me. They are small, they are tiny. So, and I have given birth to them. I provide for them. So I have this power. And when I realize I have power, that's when I started to use less and less of it,
Yeah.
exercise less and less of that authority and that power. And
Mm.
even today, my daughter is 19 and my son is 15, I see that uh, there are small, reminiscence of that, where they would still like to see me happy with their choices, right? They
Hmm.
would like to see me happy with their choices. And to me, that is something that I am constantly aware of. And this is for me a never ending process. It does not end one fine day. It
Yeah.
might be that you are quick to, like you're quicker
Hmm.
to catch yourself
Hmm.
exerting that power. You are
Hmm.
faster in stepping back and reflecting.
Hmm.
But like maybe even 10 years back, it might have taken me longer. Now it takes me very fast, and then slowly there comes a time when you no longer want your children to please you. If they are pleased, they are happy, it's great. but to
Hmm.
but this dialogue keeps coming up, even then, with the children, because it's probably a biological bond or something where they feel the need to please. And I think it's also with us adults, like when we have our friends, our spouses, our own parents, or we have a need to please people, right? Because and the inherent need is to feel loved and accepted.
Right.
uh, we don't want anybody to be upset with us, angry with us. That's a real need. So if the real need is love and acceptance, then I think we have to work on that a lot more. That
Right.
uh, uh, How to love unconditionally, not just our children, our partners, our friends, but ourselves also. Like, uh,
Yeah. Yes.
even when I lose it, I have to love myself also through it, and tell myself, yes, I was exerting power, I have lost it. Okay,
Yes.
I accept myself, I'm sorry, my children, I did this. and
Yes.
and then I take a step back. And so this whole deschooling never ends, it goes on. I mean, I think as long as I'm their mother and they are my children, even when I
It is.
become yeah, even when I become a grandmother, I think I
Yes.
will still be
Yes.
doing this in some way or the other. And I think
Right.
we can only become more and more aware of,
Aware
you
of
know,
it. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
these
So
dynamics.
with what you're saying, what I sense is being completely non-judgmental about this authority or the position of
Yeah,
power that a parent is
yeah,
in, but at the same time being constantly observant and aware of
yeah.
how it is impacting our
Yes,
child
yes,
and
yes,
constantly questioning, okay, why is my child doing this, or why
yes,
is my child making this choice? Is it
yeah,
because this is what is something that the child really wants to do, or is it because it's going to make me happy?
yeah,
And just that awareness,
yeah,
and that takes probably a lifetime
yeah,
also, because you go through so many different
yeah, yeah,
challenges and you'd
yeah.
never know what springs up, and what
Yes,
comes up.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So
True,
I,
true, true.
yeah, I like to give an example here.
Yeah,
Some days ago, my daughter, who's just 6.5, she came and told me, "Mama, I have a boyfriend." And me immediately see now all my preconceived notions about having a boyfriend, about she being young, and then even these thoughts of, are you telling this openly to everybody outside, are you sharing this with your friends? All these thoughts started
yeah,
coming to
yeah,
my
yeah,
mind,
yeah.
and just being aware of that and seeing what it is doing to me was
Hmm, hmm.
enough, and being accepting of what my daughter is saying. Probably
Yeah,
she just meant that she is very good friends with a
with the
boy
boy.
whom she likes a lot. And
Yeah,
but my mind went
yeah,
off to a
yeah,
completely
yeah,
different
yeah,
angle.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and that is what is was deschooling for me, about how do I not react or not use my inhibitions, fears, thoughts, perspectives, opinions in as a blockage to what my child was experiencing. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
yeah, you're right, Sharmila. I also have an example, something
Yes.
on those lines. My daughter loves to watch a lot of shows which have dark content, like
Mm.
psycho thrillers,
Mhm.
serial killers, murderers, all kinds of
Yeah.
psychos. And so about few years back, she always comes and shares open, Mom, I'm watching this, and in this there is this person, and he does. I'm like, are you depressed? Do you need therapy? Do I have to take you to a counselor? Are you having dark thoughts yourself? What have I done wrong? Oh no, all this. And then my daughter just, she said, she looks at me with that duh face, like uh, she said, Mom, even the people who, a person who has created this content, maybe it's based on a book, and the producers of this show and all the people who are acting in it, then they all must be crazy. If they're, what? So, let's not go overdrive. Then I said, then we have a conversation as to,
Mm.
I ask her, like, what attracts you to such shows? Or what do you get from such shows? Why are you watching them? So then she tells me, she wants to understand the workings of the mind. She wants to understand what pushes human beings to violence, what pushes human beings to behave in certain ways that is considered dark,
Mm.
or unacceptable, or uh, what makes a person schizophrenic, or psychotic, or bipolar. So I realized, then she also shared with me that I don't only watch these kind of series. I also watch talks by psychologists and doctors and experts who are also explaining these kind of things. And then she showed me, see, I'm also reading this book. And so that's when, so to stay open in that moment, uh,
Yes.
but also I think for me to be vulnerable at that moment with my child was important, because like I had to tell her, it scares me, I'm afraid. uh,
Mm.
but at the same time being aware that I'm not saying that what she's doing is bad, or it is
Mm.
a no, she should not watch these things or anything like that, but to ask her from a place of vulnerability that when you tell me you watch these kind of shows, I feel worried. How worried should I be? like,
Right.
and
Right.
that kind of opens up a whole conversation, and it kind of also she lets me into her mind, into her thoughts. Then I come to
Mm.
know what she's thinking, and I
Mm.
mean, just see from my fear based reaction to what she's actually exploring. It is so, like, it's actually the whole opposite of what I fear.
Right.
So these are the even my son. I'll give you another example. uh, he is One day he's telling me about something called, he says, woke feminism. I'm like, no, what is this? you know so and then he gives me examples of how so when he used the word woke feminism, my first reaction was, are you not a feminist? So are you going to say all women are this? He said, calm down. I am a feminist. I believe in this. I believe in this. I believe in that. But uh, I am also not in favor of this whole public discourse in which there is a complete backlash against all men, all boys, or the male gender.
Mm.
And for me, so he said, so for me, that is not real feminism. uh, so he said, then what is the difference between you know, patriarchy and inclusion or non-patriarchy. Then I said, oh, okay, like, so, and then I'm thinking, okay, he's
Hmm.
thinking deep. It's not just like, you know,
Right. Yes.
yeah. So to have these conversations and stay open to see what actually is your child thinking,
Hmm.
rather than completely saying this is wrong and this is not right, to
Hmm.
think about it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's so true. I have so many examples of this, and one example that I would like to share right now with everybody is when we had just started our unschooling journey. I had also started a learning center, which was supposed to be which was planned as a democratic center where children have their choices and they do things in their way and they learn what they want to. So whatever vocation, skill or knowledge or whatever they wanted to do, it was going to happen together in the learning center. After a point of about 3 or 4 months, I started seeing that my children were withdrawing. They didn't
Mm,
want to be part of it. They did not want to get up on time. They did not want to do things on time. And that used to frustrate me that they were not cooperating, they were not collaborating, they were not ready to be part of that group. And initially I wanted, my heart was screaming out saying, this is something I've started and I've started for you. I want you to be part of it and be equally excited about it. And just one day when I was having a conversation with them, they came and they were feeling trusted. They came up and told me, Mama, but we just want our space.
mm,
It's not about what you have started. We just want our space. We want we want our privacy. We want our freedom. And we were running the center in the same place where we stayed, so even though we had made boundaries, those boundaries were never kept, because children being children, they really, you can't really expect them to strictly follow that this is not a no zone and this is a
yeah.
this out of their curiosity, and because they know their friends are upstairs, they would want to go and they would want to be there and all that. So and that's when I realized that my children actually are yearning for their own space, and
Mm,
it's not happening over here. And that helped me go through an entire process of whether what is it that I really wanted as a parent, for my children, for myself, and for even my expectations or my aspirations to give back to society. So there were so many things that I had to take into consideration. And I also remember having a discussion on our unschooling group
yeah,
about it, where you said
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but the running a learning center is not unschooling. And I was like, oh, how can you say that? So the ego, what I'm coming
Mm,
to is,
yeah,
uh, we have a very strong ego which
yeah,
constantly tells us no.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I guess one more phase of deschooling is to somewhere become friends with this ego. I'm not saying one has to tame this ego, or one has to control the ego. One has to become friends with the ego, and the ego has to also become friends with you to
yeah,
help you see. So
yeah,
would you like to throw some light around this, because
yeah,
I
yeah.
learned so much from your responses to to all the questions that have been asked on the unschooling group.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so the thing is, there are a couple of things I want to express over here. Uh, when we start the journey of homeschooling, we very quickly want to convert the world. You know,
Mhm.
in the sense that we have found something great and now we want the whole world to see it, and we want to convert everyone into this kind of life, which is great, but that is coming from a place of ego. And it's like I've also been there. I've been there, like, telling people that this is the only way, this is the best way, this is what you should do, and everyone should do this. But very soon I realized that no, I mean, it's if I'm saying this is the only way, and this is everyone should stop going to school, and there should be no schools in this world, and schools are bad, and all that kind of thing, then I feel I'm just doing the same thing, because then everyone is saying schools are the best, and I'm saying schools are. So what's the difference, in the sense that I'm carrying one jhanda and they are carrying one more jhanda, so it's the same thing. So I think very quickly we do this, we I think a lot of slowing down is needed, because first of all it is truly for our children to see what suits them, you know.
Right.
And I think from that sense, schooling is not bad. It's not bad at all.
Mm.
But schooling can be delayed as much as possible, I feel, and that choice should be of the children, not of the
Mm.
parents, because
Yes.
uh, it's not their choice to be sent to school at 2.5, 3 o'clock, 3 at 3 years. It's what we do to them. But schooling is not at all bad if that's what the child wants. A learning center is great if that's what the child wants. But we need to give that space, a lot of that space, for privacy, for thinking for oneself, for seeing what our needs are. Like, for example, my children, for the last few years now, they don't like talking about themselves to uh,
Mm.
strangers anymore. In fact, my daughter, when when she takes on a new project or something, I'm still this excited mom, and I want to call up everybody and tell them, see, she's doing this. That is coming from my ego. That okay, I have unschooled, but still see my child is doing so many
So
things,
many things. Yeah. Yes.
and then my daughter says, "You dare not tell anybody, you dare not tell anybody. I don't want
Mm.
anyone to know I'm doing this."
Yes.
So I ask her, "Why don't you want me to tell anybody?"
Mm.
Then she says, "See, you can only tell Papa, you can only tell, my sister. She has a list of people I can tell. Beyond
Mm.
that, no." And
Yes.
her
Yes.
reasoning is that, actually, even my son, both of them, their reasoning is that it creates unwanted pressures and expectations on them to excel, to stick to it, to take
Mm.
it to some outcome, to
Mm.
make something out of it.
Mm.
Okay, now people will say, okay, now she's become this. So, if Mama, if I'm selling 2 cakes to friends, then don't tell the world that she's now baking and she's going to become a baker. Because I might not, I might
Mm.
not. And
Yes.
I see
Yes.
that my children are leaving themselves to much more flexibility, much more options, much more unlimited options than still
Mm.
I do, because I have this habit. I will call up people and say, "Now she's doing this, or now she's doing," and now she warns me even before I can do it. Don't you dare tell anybody.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
because they want to stay
Mm.
free of all these pressures and expectations that comes with from the world, from even
Yes.
close friends and family.
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
so I think that is like, they really become private now, and they don't want to
Yeah.
talk to the press. They don't want to uh,
Mm.
come on platforms, and unless it's a very close group where they know the people and things like that, they are saying,
Right.
"Nah, we don't want to talk about it." She
Yes.
says,
Yes.
"People who go to school, they are not talking about it. We don't go to school, so why should we talk about it?"
Talk about
It's the way we live, and we
yes,
don't have
yes.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, like, my oldest constantly asks me, why do you want everybody to know? And that comes often as a question that I start thinking about, that why do I want everybody to know that this is what he's doing now and this is what
yeah,
he did some days ago or some months ago? What is it? And then, even becoming aware that yes, there is a need in me for
yeah,
the whole world to know, or to maybe to justify in a way that
yeah,
what we are doing is great and what
yeah,
we are is there, but my son doesn't feel it,
mm,
and he
yeah,
feels that it's not necessary at all.
yeah,
And so even that becomes part of your deschooling, where you are
yes, yes,
accepting these things, accepting yourself and becoming more and more aware of
yeah,
what is going
mm,
inside you,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You know, we could talk so much about deschooling. It is a very long process. I'm going to just start, there have been
Taking
some questions that have come up, there's some comments that have come up. So I also request all our viewers to uh, list down any questions that are coming up in their minds. So far, just to reiterate, we have looked at deschooling as a process. It's not something that you start with and it ends and then you are into homeschooling or unschooling. It kind of goes on through your life. There are many things that one needs to be aware of, and one has to, it is more, yeah, one important thing, it is more for parents than for children.
yeah,
It is not saying that it's not for children too, because even children are, especially if they have been to school, they have to unlearn the ways and the conditioning that school has brought to them. But it is more so for parents, because it is our expectations, our goals, our egos, that and our perspectives and understanding of the world that comes in the way to what the child wants, and what the child, and how the child wants to make his choices, what choices they want to make, how do they want to lead their own life. So there's a lot around that. And on that note, I'm going to start taking questions that are there. Um, so there's one question: how do we handle our children's emotions when they are being judged by others for not going to school but being homeschooled?
mm, mm. Yeah. So, so this is something that comes again because as human beings, we all have a uh, very primal need to be loved and accepted, and so therefore it's very normal actually when a child is feeling left out or feeling emotional, in the sense mainly it is a feeling of being left out or being judged or being questioned by a peer group. So there is a need to belong to a peer group, and it is a very uh, genuine and ordinary actually need of every human being. And therefore when there are a bunch of kids who are doing one kind of thing and there's one child who is not, there is going to be these kind of situations, but that does not mean it cannot be handled. Okay, so I have also seen children respond differently to these things as well. Like my son, at one point he just refused. He said, I don't want to play with these bunch of kids. They're always ridiculing me and they're always calling names, and why should I put myself through this kind of insult? And there was a part of me at that time which wanted to make him get along, like I would say, no, go explain to them, go tell them, come, I will go and explain to them. But I realized there was a huge resentment in him, and he said that no, I am okay to not be friends with such people,
Hmm.
because I would rather be friends with people who accept someone who is different than others. So I think the only way is to so when your child comes and says, I'm feeling bad because I'm being judged by others for not going to school, I think you have to see from within yourself, are you also feeling judged somewhere? And
Mm,
are you feeling responsible that your child is being judged for it? Because you
mm,
made that choice for your child. So, so to have these conversations openly with, maybe your partner, if your child is an older child, have it openly with them. But to basically see that why uh, is it triggering something inside you when your child
mm,
comes and says, and it is always, it's generally a feeling, oh, my child is feeling left out, you know.
mm,
Now
mm,
the thing is, can you live with that? Can you live with the fact that yes, your child will be left out, in the sense that, and to also see that it is a passing phase and it's not a permanent thing, because
mm.
your child might feel left out by a certain group, but
Yes.
might eventually find a group which is more conducive to your child, more accepting of your child. So
Mm,
to really wait it out a bit, even
mm,
if your child is feeling miserable, not to push your child to
yes.
accommodate, to get
Mm,
along, or to make the others see a point of view or something like that, but to honestly tell the child that, when we do things differently from most people, sometimes we do feel left out, and this doesn't happen only when you're a child. It happens all throughout our lives. We feel
yes.
left out so many times in our lives. So it's part of the growth of a human being to be able
Mm,
to live with the feeling of being left out. And then we can always ask the child that, what would you like to do to not feel this way? And then see
mm,
what the child comes up with, because so many times children come up with crazy
yes.
responses, because my children I think even this time they're older, and they went to Delhi, and they met up with some old neighbor over there. They're visiting their dad over there, and some neighbor, and say, "Arey, kitne bade ho gaye ho? How you all grown up so much?" And the next statement is, "12th ho gaya, 10th ho gaya." And
Yes.
both my children without thinking, हाँ आंटी हो गया, 12th भी हो गया, 10th भी हो गया, बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स भी आए, और मेरे को तो एडमिशन भी मिल गया बाहर, and all that, they just, and so I said, why did you all just make up stories? He said, the moment we said that, she shut up. She didn't want to know anymore
More.
because she, she's not really interested in my life and me. She just wants to see if I am a normal, regular
Yes.
person.
Yeah.
And my son even came out with the name of our academy, and he said, I just tell people I go to some Starship Academy or something like that. I said, what if? So then we had a huge discussion on what if they ask you, what do you study there? He said, I told them I study astronomy. So, so children also come up with a
Yes.
lot of things. So
Yeah.
to ask the child, what what would you like to do to not feel the way you are feeling, to validate that feeling,
Right.
and then
Right.
ask them if they want to feel differently, and then what to do next. I think
Hmm.
that is the way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah. So I have had so many such experiences where once an older child came to my daughter and said that, "Oh, you've not yet started going to school. Are you never going to go to school?" So she said, "No, I'm not. Probably not. I don't know. Maybe if I want to." So she was all blathering and trying to give different answers. I was close by, but not with her. And then this girl came and told him, "You know what my mother says? If you don't go to school, you're going to become a bai." And then my daughter was puzzled, and then she said, came back and asked me, "Is it bad to be a bai?" I said, "No, it's not bad to be a bai."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's not
Correct,
every
correct,
profession is
correct, correct, correct.
important, it's
Yeah,
valuable.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yes, I know this question is real.
Hmm.
Uh, like Dola said, I think what we need to focus on is what is it doing to us? and whether we have the patience to wait it out, or are we going to, let our emotions take over us, and we just retort out of fear, out of this, or we would like to just wait it out and see that it's a phase and it's going to pass away. uh, I have, it's still a challenge to me
Yeah.
because I have three children in three different age groups. It's still a challenge to me, but every time I tell myself that I'm not going to react, I'm going to respond. So I'm going to take my time, I'm going to come to terms with
Yeah.
all what I am feeling before I say anything to my child, or even say anything to that other person who is judging my child.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that is important. We'll take the next question that is there. Okay. Oh, there are lots of questions now. Let me just. Okay. This is a little maybe doesn't is not with our topic today. Please let us know how to teach an autistic child about privacy. He doesn't know it's not good at all to show his genital parts. I don't know if you want to take this up, Dola, or
I think I am not qualified to take this
mm,
question, because you probably would need to speak to a special educator or a parent who has got special needs children, autistic children who are homeschooling and unschooling. And I think Sharmila will be more than happy to forward you groups on
yes.
Facebook, which catered specially to such families. And I think if you post your question there, you will be far more supported than
Yes, that's
I
true.
would be.
That's true. I think that's the most appropriate answer here, because I think the best answer that you will get, or solution that you will find, is by talking to other parents or special educators who are working with on the issue of autism. So hold on. Yes, after this session, I will send you links to a few parents who have done a lot of work around autism, as well as maybe one or two special educators and groups that are working on autism.
Yeah.
Uh, there's another question. Okay, so this uh, user wants to know about the unschooling group that was mentioned. They want to share more, want to know more about this group, and how I think uh, it's a it's related to your group, the unschooling in India, share support and reflect.
Yeah, I think it you can only share it. It's called
Hmm.
and I don't think it's any different from what Sharmita's group is doing. It's called unschooling in India. Share support ask. So you can just check it out on Facebook, and maybe when I go to the Homeschool India page later on, I can put up a link over there.
Okay, so then this is a general comment or question where they want to have a session where deschooling, unschooling, homeschooling, all three are explained. I think that's a good idea. Maybe we could have a panel, where we have both homeschoolers and unschoolers who come and share this perspective. Uh, from my side, I would say that uh, in homeschooling, just like in my last session on notions of childhood, I talked about a romantic view of the childhood, where a parent believes that they have to nurture the growth of the child and teach the child the right and the wrong and the good and the bad, and teach the child about the world around them in a very loving way. That is what homeschooling parents do. They bring in, yes, they bring in academics, they bring in, the parent is completely comfortable with their role, all of being in a position of authority, and they look at the child as somebody who has to be loved, and a lot of warmth and care and everything has to be given to the child, and the child needs to be molded into this environment so that they can become independent beings who can deal with the environment. Whereas unschooling to another extent, though the warmth, love, care is all there, apart from that, there is a strong belief that children have the ability to make their own choices. With and life is about living these choices and not looking at them as good decisions, bad decisions, but just moving on from whatever choices you make. And it could start off by a child deciding what they want to eat, when they want to sleep, when they want to, what clothes they want to wear, and then it would also move on to making choices about what they want to learn, what courses they want to do, or how they want to live their lives. It would move on to more complex things also. But the belief and the trust in that a child can make these choices and make their own path is very strong in unschooling. However, you find various shades between homeschooling and unschooling among many parents. And deschooling, as we said, though it's a phase that continues because the process of reflection doesn't end, but it is a phase that prepares you to step into your homeschooling or unschooling journey and enjoy the homeschool and unschooling
Right.
journey.
I think
Uh,
people often think that deschooling is also kind of homeschooling, but it's not. So there is homeschooling in which there is a whole spectrum, and then there is unschooling in which there is a whole spectrum. But deschooling is not really about. It's not about homeschooling or unschooling. It is about what it's like preparing. So it's, I would give it the metaphor of when you have to plant a garden, you prepare the soil. You prepare the soil by adding compost and amrit mitti and all kinds of things. You prepare the soil before you plant your sapling. So deschooling is actually that process. So deschooling is not a kind of homeschooling or a kind of
Kind of
unschooling. So
unschooling.
I think a lot of people get confused with these terms. So
Hmm.
we can't obviously talk about unschooling and homeschooling completely in this session, and that would be a completely different topic. Just one thing I feel, uh, I think one compass within you is that uh, there is right and wrong, good and bad, and all that. When you're homeschooling, that is when you take your children out of the school culture and you want to take the responsibility of that on yourself. Uh, know thyself. I think that's very important. Know
Yes.
thyself. if if you are an authoritative person, accept it. Accept that you're an authoritative person. Don't make excuses. Don't manipulate. Don't put up a farce of being non-authoritative when you actually
Hmm.
are. So be at peace with who you are. If you are an authoritative parent, be that openly, honestly. Children like honesty. They don't like manipulation. Don't manipulate people. Be who you are openly, with integrity and with honesty. I think that is the most important thing about deschooling. Whether you unschool or homeschool is not important. If for you it is really, really important that your child wakes up at 7, takes a bath, has breakfast, sits down for studies, and then this, then this, then this, and without that, you will not have peace of mind. Because if you don't have peace of mind, your child will not have peace of mind, and everyone else in the family will not have peace of mind. So choose peace over everything else. Choose peace.
Hmm.
And the only way to choose peace for some people is to accept with honesty who you are. So the process really is that. Know
Yes.
thyself. I mean,
Yes.
अपने आप को पहचानो. अगर अपने आप को पहचानोगे तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. But
Hmm.
don't put up farces about things. Like deep
Right.
down, you're authoritative and you want to control and you want your child to behave in a certain way. Nothing
Hmm.
wrong in that. But be honest. Be honest. That is the main thing. Honesty is the
Yes.
most important thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. Such a relevant point that you've made over here. That it is about, when you say it is about parents, it is about parents knowing themselves and accepting themselves as they are at that point of time, and being open to change
yeah,
also,
yeah, yeah,
and at the same time. So it's a beautiful process. It's that sweet pain, that
yeah,
is called, because it
yeah,
also hurts, but it also
yeah,
takes you to a different level. And I'm still experiencing it. I still don't say that I've completely deschooled, though I know that I enjoy my process of being with my children much more than what I did earlier on. Today, my one of my son has chosen to go back to school. My daughter wants to go back to wants to
yeah,
explore schooling,
yeah,
and we are
yeah,
all open to it, and I'm at
yeah,
peace with that. I
yeah.
think that is important over here. uh, okay, let's see. I know we've crossed, it's 1:04. We'll just take a couple of questions that are there and comments. um, okay. Okay. In this homeschooling journey, should we be on a quest to help the child find a path, future, or just let them be and figure out their lives? How involved should we be in their lives? When should we cut off?
So, so as a parent, I think your primary responsibility as a parent is definitely to support your child to find his or her path in life. It is not to let them be. It's not like that. It's not like, oh,
Mm,
it is not neglecting. It is
yeah.
certainly not neglecting. It is participating, it is collaborating, it is cooperation. So to cooperate, to collaborate, and to co-create, and to support your child to find what brings them joy, what brings out their creativity, what brings out their passion, what brings out their interest. So no unschooling parent just lets their child be. That's not right. That's We are not neglecting our children. We are participating in their journey. We are participating in their exploration. We are the facilitators. We provide the resources uh, by watching, by observing, by discussing, by having conversations. So we really have to stop saying that should we just let them be. Of course not. Why are you a parent if you're just going to let them be?
True.
You're not going to let them be. Actually, when you send them to school, you're letting them be, because
Mm.
you're so trustworthy of the school system that you are so relaxed. You just sit back and say, okay, school bhej diya, now I'm fine, I'm free. but that's but it's just the opposite in unschooling. You are much more needed to, handhold, be there, explore along with them. And to answer the second part of the question, how involved should we be in their life and when should we cut off? I mean, more than being involved, the energy should be of engagement, not involved. So involvement can become meddling, which is वैसा मत कर, ये मत कर, वो मत कर. That is for me involved. Whereas when you use the word, see, words have energy. So when you use the word engage, when you use words like observant, when you use words like co-create, cooperation, collaborate, that means you are equal participatory in their explorations. And
Mm.
when should we cut off? Again, why do you have to cut off if you're engaged? If you are enjoying the journey, then you stay engaged. Cutting off is sounds very egoistic and violent in a way. Uh, ठीक है, you do what you feel like. I'm cutting off.
Mm.
No, you are uh, you are watching and observing how your child is blossoming and what they are exploring, and you are there for them through their triumphs and successes and victories, and when they fail, and even when they let go of something, when they figure out this doesn't work for them, you are always engaged. So that's how it is. So there is no question of cutting off or letting them be. These are very mainstream words. You don't ever do that. You stay
Mm.
engaged and you stay
Yes.
interested. You stay interested, main thing. You have to stay interested.
Yeah. Wow, that's such an important, once again, a pearl of wisdom that, once we opt out of schooling, it's because we want to be engaged in our children's life. That is, in fact, that has been one of my biggest needs, that I want to be part of my children's life. And I don't think that ever I'm going to stop being part of their
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it becomes easier for us as homeschoolers, unschoolers, because we respect what the child wants. So later on, when the child becomes independent, it doesn't come as a harsh reality, that now my child doesn't want to take my decisions into consideration or my opinions into consideration and only wants to do his things. It's always been part of our life, so it never becomes a huge issue. So there is no question of cutting off, definitely. Um, Okay, there's a very a crucial question that's been asked over here. Uh, I do get some fears sometimes. What if I'm not able to facilitate? What if I'm not able to find the correct resources? What if they are more or less passing fears? So, it,
Whoever has asked that question, you have already answered it. They are more or less passing years.
yeah.
Anyway, jokes apart, I think it's first of all, it's very natural to have fears. Uh, because when you're stepping out of a culture that is so embedded in the human psyche, that is the culture of school, where whether it is true or not, there is certainly an illusion that this, after this will come this, after this will come this, after this. So whether it is true or not, very few of us pause and actually reflect on that. Maybe it is not true. Maybe it is just an illusion of security, and it is really not. I mean, uh, if you just see in the pandemic, uh, how many people have been thrown off rail, schools are closed, colleges are closed, universities are closed, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their businesses. There are children who have got admission in foreign universities but are unable to join those universities. And so, so there is always a chance of this very secure setup which we have grown up with collapsing, and it has collapsed. I tell people that just look at your lives now in this pandemic. All the things that you took for granted have actually dissolved, right? So when we become aware of this, then uh, then our fears can be addressed more maturely, in a more reflective way. Having fears is human. And what is the fear really? The fears are about death, financial insecurity, whether my child will be able to fend for himself or herself. Now, I want to ask people that, do you think if your child went to school, you would not have these fears? And if you don't have these fears, if your child is going to school, why is that? Why is that?
Mm,
Because to me, death, financial insecurity, and a human being not able to fend for himself or herself can happen anytime, anywhere, for no reason at all. You know.
mm,
So, so we have to ask ourselves that how real are these fears really? Okay, and what if I'm not able to facilitate? You are lucky you have support systems like this group, Homeschooling India, Unschooling India, alternate altered education. There are so many forums where you have the support of other parents who are helping you out. So it's not that you are alone completely. You have the support. So you share your fears, you will get inputs, you take those inputs, you try to
yes.
implement them. So Then again, about resources, you will find the resources because people will help you. There is so much support system now. And trust your children. Your children can get their resources that they need. You don't have to always find them. My
Hmm.
children find their own resources and then they run it through me. And then I sometimes, if they're free resources, great. If they're paid resources, I have to see whether I can afford them. We look for
Hmm.
alternatives. And so it's not like you are a person and then there are the children. You're a team. You and your children work as a team to find the resources. So
Yeah.
your children will help you. You're not alone. Your children are going to help you in this journey. So yeah, so there are a lot of what ifs, but they're, like you said, they're passing. And if you just ask yourself why I'm having this fear, and if you feel you can address it in some way by seeking help from others, the fear will go. So that's how it is.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So the fear might go, or you might come to terms with it, saying
Yeah,
that, right now you don't know, and what you
yeah,
don't know, you don't
yeah,
need to fear. So
yeah.
you can, uh, yeah, yeah. So how we are? It's already 1:15. It's, I mean, 1 hour 15 minutes have crossed, and there are a few more questions. I would like to know from you, Dola, whether you're okay to take one or two more questions, or would you like to look at the comments at the end of the session, or whenever you have the free time, and answer, some of them on the group.
No, I'm fine to take a few more questions. It's okay.
You're
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, okay, there is this question. If both parents are not ready for homeschooling, but one is ready to have all the responsibilities, can it be done?
Hmm. So when you say both parents are not ready for homeschooling, are you saying that there is no consensus, or 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 the one parent is saying I'm okay with it but don't expect anything from me? So there are these are two different things. If there is no consensus on homeschooling between the two parents, then please do not uh, start homeschooling till you reach consensus. And now that is a dynamics in each family. You have to see how important it is for you to have a more peaceful environment at home. How much are you willing to rebel? What is your stomach for rebellion? How much you're willing to fight for it? So that differs from people to people. Like, some people don't want to fight, some people don't want to rebel. They are okay with status quo, and that's fine, that's okay. And but consensus on homeschooling is definitely important if you're going to homeschool. Otherwise, it's not possible because
Hmm.
it's like I said, it's a teamwork, and it's important. And otherwise, you need to be a rebel, and maybe your rebellion will one day convert the other person, or may not. So whether you can live with that rebellion all your life is a choice you have to make. But if the person who's asking this question is meaning that there is consensus, but the one parent is saying, look, मेरे से कुछ, like, I won't be able to do much, you do everything, then it's a different thing. Then you decide whether you need participation from your partner, or you are enough to take on the larger chunk of the responsibility. Because I do have I know I have friends whose there is consensus on homeschooling, but sometimes the mom is a full time professional, and she's unable to be at home and give time. So the father is doing the homeschooling, and some most of the time it is the other way, where the father is in a full time profession, has no time as such to get into the nitty gritties of homeschooling. So it comes upon the mother. So that you have to
Hmm.
see how it works in your family, and whether you as a human being are so driven and are willing to take it on. That is a personal choice for you. I know of families where the mother's in full-time profession and the father's doing homeschooling. So yeah, so there are two different scenarios. You have to choose which one is yours and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Um, okay, there's one more question. I heard somewhere the transition of a child from being homeschooled to be able to give the first formal examinations, IGCSE or boards, is very, very difficult. So, how do you have the balance to reach the path and not spoil this beautiful path?
So again, see, if you as a family are conventionally homeschooling, which is you have always followed a curriculum and you have always done that academic rigor of testing your children, making sure that at the end of this year they have learned so much, at the end of this year they have learned so much, then definitely your child is already trained to the rigor of an academic path. So for that child, taking an exam might not be such a big deal, right? So that's your path. But if you're a homeschooler who are more eclectic, where you have not really focused on a curriculum with that kind of rigor, you have only been you know mainly focusing on subjects or interests that your child likes, and then at one point in time, like maybe when the child is 14 or 15, you guys as a family decide that now it's time to take the formal examination, then you might have to put in a year or two of rigor, which you can, because if there is a willingness to take an exam, the willingness to go through the rigor should also be there, will come. So it not be easy, but it will come because that's what you are choosing. So and uh, you can always hire tutors or join a center and they will train you to take those exams. It doesn't take away anything from your path, because you're making that choice to take this exam, so it's a choice that you're making, so it shouldn't take away anything. And for unschoolers who are like those who are not following any academic rigor, uh, again I would say that the day it's a choice that you're making for yourself. Like if like I've seen my daughter, she made a choice to take her music exams through Cambridge, and she made herself go through that rigor. She nobody had to tell her. She put herself through that discipline, through that rigor. So the crux of the thing is, when it is a choice that the child is making for himself or herself, and is aware of it, that okay, this is a choice I am making because this is going to get me somewhere, then it doesn't take away anything from the beautiful path that you're on. It only adds to it. It only adds more value to it, because rigor in any way is not bad. It is good.
Hmm.
When you
Hmm.
like something so much that you want to put yourself through the rigor of it, it is a good thing. It makes you a stronger human being. It makes you a persistent human being. It gives you, you know, strength of character, perseverance, and things like that. So it's part of the path. It is not separate from it, is what I would say.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and just taking this example, a question that my son asked me a few days ago comes back to me. So my oldest, who turned 16, uh, he decided that he wants to give examinations, his board exams, and between NIOS, IGCSE, he said that he prefers IGCSE. And knowing very well that private candidates may not really, they find it difficult to acquire the equivalent certificate and so on. He said, no, I find IGCSE more challenging and I want to give that. So we were okay with it. And then one day he came and asked me. So now that I have decided to do my IGCSEs and I have joined a learning center to do that, does it mean that I'm no longer an unschooler? You know, so would I did give my take on it, saying that unschooling is in the mind, it's not. And if I forced this on you, then probably you would
yeah,
have gone back to schooling. But since it is a choice that you have made, and we have just facilitated that it happens for you, you're still unschooling. So
yeah,
what do you think about
yeah, yeah,
this?
yeah. I feel the same way, Sharmila, because, like I said, that as long as as long as a parent is conscious and aware of the fact that I am not forcing this on to my child because it is my goal for the child, it is unschooling. As long as the child is feeling free to choose for himself or herself that to do this, it is unschooling, because uh, no one is forcing anybody, right? And even if I am being forced, in the sense, sometimes I would take an exam because the system demands that I take it, so it's in a way a force. I can't
Yes.
join a university and pursue
Mhm.
a course of my choice if I don't take this exam, right? So in a way it's a force, but I'm aware of that force and I'm willing to, succumb to that
Yes.
force,
Yes.
because I want to do that course, because I want to learn, I want to increase my knowledge about it. So or sometimes it's peer pressure. Okay, I want to, I want to belong to a certain kind of a group of people who take exams, who go to school, who go to college, and it is my choice because I want to belong to that kind of a group. So it is a force, but I am accepting this is a force which I want to succumb to because it fulfills a deeper need of mine. So
Hmm.
that's the way it is. So this is what the whole deschooling process is about. How
Yeah.
aware of yourself are you? You know, even when you're succumbing to a pressure, are you aware of it? Are you choosing to succumb? कोई गर्दन पकड़ के करा तो नहीं रहा, like is someone holding your
Hmm.
neck and putting a gun to your head and saying you have to do
Have to
this?
do this.
Okay,
Yes.
now at that point also I would say, if someone holds a gun to my head and say you have to do this or die, if I say that I want to save my life so I'll do it, I think it's a choice you're making. It's all free
Right.
will, right? It's
Yes.
all about free will. And if you say, no, I will not do it, kill me, that's also a free
So
will, a
choice.
choice you're making. But are you aware of it? That's the main thing. It's all about awareness. So
Yeah.
when you do something with awareness, it is a free choice. When it is not, it is not a free choice. I think that's the crux of it all.
Yes, it's so important. And this, I hope all parents also see and get the message that we are trying to uh, give them through this interaction, is that one, whether you're homeschooling, unschooling, or even if you opt for schooling,
Yeah,
as long as you as a family and family unit, as a unit, you all are happy and at peace with this, and you all are enjoying the process. That is more important than where falling into a bracket of homeschooling or unschooling or schooling or whatever. It is because life itself is a journey, and it's your choices that is going to take you to the next path.
yeah,
So it's not about this, and deschooling helps you to become more and more aware of that.
yeah,
Deschooling helps you become more and more aware of how your past experiences, how your preconceived notions, your knowledge or maybe perspectives that you have built over the year, how they are affecting the decisions that you are taking today, and how are they impacting on your entire family, your children, your spouse, your parents, everybody who is part of your family. I think
yeah,
that is the crux of deschooling. And yes, on that note, we are already 1.5 hour into our discussion. I would like to ask you just one last thing and then we'll end. Do you have something, to say as a closure to this session?
yeah.
And once you do that, maybe we can close the session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sharmila, I think it's something that I have, slowly realized over the years, in the way I have lived my life, is that I would I would say that don't follow anything because don't follow anything on the basis of ideology. You know, uh, even if you do, it should give you joy, because I think for me, what has happened over the years is that uh, whatever choices I make, is it making my body more relaxed? Is it making my spirit more relaxed? Is it giving me a good night's sleep? Is it making me a joyful, chirpy, cheerful person? Uh, or, am I up against the whole world fighting in conflict? Uh, so, so the when we it's great to have ideologies, you know, but if it is not giving you joy, and if it is not giving your children joy, then I don't know if it's going to work, because if you're fighting against yourself, then it is going to, and you're fighting with the whole world, it's going to somewhere make you really exhausted. So to not feel any shame, to not feel any guilt, to pursue joy and peace, I think for me that's really important, because uh, don't unschool because it is the cool thing to do, or
Hmm.
don't homeschool because it will make you stand out in the crowd. uh, Examine the intentions behind why you want to homeschool, why you want to unschool, and keep and that is an examination and reflection you have to do all the time. And give yourself the freedom to choose differently anytime. So even if you have homeschooled, and even if you have unschooled, and someday you feel that, I mean, I don't think I can do this, this is not working for me, give yourself and your children the freedom to change tracks. It's all right. It's all right, is what I want to tell everybody, because
Yeah.
you know that's the main thing. I think we have to all give ourselves permission to be joyful and at peace, and that's the main thing. Uh, that's the message I want to leave for
Wow.
everyone.
Wow.
So,
And yes, and that's such a wonderful message to end our interaction with. All I want to say is thank you so much, Dola, for
thank you.
coming on this platform and sharing so much of what you know, your experiences, and what you have evolved to learn and understand. And we are sure that we will invite you again for discussions. We're planning some more panels and so on, so we hope to call you
Yes.
once again. And for to the viewers who we have not been able to address everybody's questions, I have just taken a few which I felt were very important to be taken up in this discussion. But Dola will come back. She is a member of our group now,
Mhm.
so she will come back and she'll respond to each message.
Yeah.
So on that note, I would like to thank you, Dola.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And thank you, viewers, for being part of today's broadcast. And I'm going to end the broadcast now.
Bye, everyone.
Yes.